Giddy up, folks. This is going to be my deepest episode yet, and I am really going to get into some of what has truly given me peace in my life. And my intention is that it connects with you deeply and that you are able to more fully understand the truth of who you are and understand God in your life and align with that presence in a way that is so powerful that it gives you the ability to create anything that you want in this life and to trust that God has always got your back. Let's dive in. Hey there, beautiful soul, and welcome to the Light Centered Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Hacking, life and wellness coach, and this podcast is your space for deep conversations and real life integration, all to help you more fully share your unique God given light with the world. If you're someone who's on a healing journey and knows that they're meant for more, or just someone who wants to find more peace and connection in your life, then you are absolutely in the right place. All right, let's get into it. Hi, friend. Today I'm really excited because I'm diving into one of my all-time favorite topics. And hang in until the end because you will get the full picture of why this has been so impactful for me and how I believe it can really help you too. Let's first dive into one of the things that I think is the main issue in today's world. And that is that we are so distracted. We have so many inputs, so many things that we should be doing, things we're running around to, noise, chaos, the news, social media, and it leaves us in a state of constantly feeling distracted, overwhelmed. And because of this, many of us have lost sight of what it feels like to feel truly connected. And in today's episode, I want to have an honest and deep conversation about why we are all so disconnected. And I'm going to give you some examples of how to know if you are experiencing this disconnect. And then I want to move us into talking about how we can reconnect and realign with ourselves, with what's most important to us, how we want to live our lives, with our higher purpose, and ultimately with God. And if you never listen to one other piece of content that I put out, listen to this one. Understanding this concept completely changed my perspective of God here on earth, of how to receive guidance and answers and clarity, and to find true peace and flow in life. And when I am connected to this alignment, everything in life gets easier, things fall into place. And at the end, I want to share a crazy story with you about how the first time that I experienced this, it changed my life in ways that still feel unbelievable to me, truly. And then I want to make sure that I say that I always want you to listen to anything I say and tune back into God, to yourself, and to know that this is my understanding that helps me visualize and connect and align. You still need to lean into your own intuition, your own understanding, and always, always pray, ask for clarity, keep what feels aligned, and release what doesn't. And know that my intention in sharing this is to help those who may need it and ultimately help you find alignment and connection with yourself and the Creator. This is just my interpretation. I mean, I think it's a pretty good one. I think it's pretty dope and it did change my life, but I want you to always, always do what feels right for you. Okay, so let's dive into it. When we feel disconnected, let's start with the self. When you feel disconnected from yourself, I'm going to give you some examples of what that might feel like or how that might manifest in your life. Number one is ignoring and suppressing your emotions. Number two is not being able to hear your inner voice, inner wisdom, or intuition. If I say that and you're like, I don't actually know what that is, I don't know how to tune into that, or I know what it is, but I don't think I feel it very strongly, then you may have disconnected from this. Another piece is having a hard time making decisions. If you find yourself going back and forth a lot, you don't trust that first instinct that you have, or maybe even if you have like prayed about something or really tried to tune in and it still feels hard to trust, then again, this may be a disconnect. If you feel extremely stressed a lot of the time, if you don't feel present, if you find yourself checking out, feeling the need to numb out or zone out, maybe you are not sure if you can trust yourself in certain situations. Another one is maybe feeling disassociated from your body. You have a hard time truly connecting with your body and what it needs and what it's telling you, and basically feeling numb in general and not feeling like a clear channel or that you get clear guidance is a sign. If you're in this state, you are probably doing a lot of things that you should do, things you have to do, or that you feel obligated to do, and you may have a feeling of running on autopilot. Believe me, I have been here and I know what that feels like. These are all indicators that you may be disconnected from yourself. And a lot of times this happens over time and we don't notice it until we start feeling sick. We actually might start feeling super drained or burnt out. Our body feels really weak and we feel tired and exhausted all the time. In my case, this manifested as chronic illness, chronic fatigue. It was years worth of not listening to that inner guidance, not listening to what my body needed, just pushing through, toughing it out, all that kind of stuff that ultimately led to me having really bad adrenal problems, hormonal issues, fatigue, burnout, right? So if you don't learn to listen to this, then a lot of times it manifests eventually as some of those physical pieces. And I think this happens mainly because of tuning out of our emotions, shoving things down. Maybe something happened in the past where you taught yourself that you shouldn't trust yourself. Maybe you did make a decision that you thought was wrong. If you've had trauma, a lot of times trauma can bring a sort of disassociation and disconnect from your body. Other things can be just the chaos of life. If you are just running on autopilot all the time and not stopping to think about or sit with what you need, what you're telling yourself, all those things, and it's very common in today's world because it is so easy to be disconnected. If you think about from the second that you wake up to the second that you go to sleep, how often is your brain not occupied, checking off all the things that you need to do instead of connecting with what you need today, what's something that you really feel called to do today? And a lot of times we are not doing that in today's world. Okay, so that's a look at how we get disconnected from ourselves. The second way that we can be disconnected is feeling disconnected from our values or from what we care most about in this life. This can also be seen as from our higher purpose or calling in life. And this experience oftentimes feels like we've lost sight of having a goal or an ultimate desire in life. We're letting life happen to us instead of intentionally creating the life that we want. Another sign of this is when we might be working a lot or signing up for things that we care about, but that we don't like actually care about, that don't bring us fulfillment. We're just signing up without thinking. We're just filling our plate. We're putting things on our calendar and we're just going from thing to thing. We are on autopilot. Another example of this can be maybe we're chasing a lot of things, chasing money, a status, a physique, a social class, maybe it's a friend group that we're trying to be a part of, all without having a real clear vision of why this matters to us and what we actually want and how it might be conflicting with things that are actually more important to us. Another sign of this is that we oftentimes find ourselves not prioritizing the things that actually matter most to us, like being a present parent, spending time with loved ones, going on meaningful vacations, having great experiences, spending time with God, spending more time in nature, serving others in a meaningful way, or pursuing work that actually brings us a lot of joy. And instead of doing that, we kind of find ourselves ending the week just feeling completely drained. We can't wait for the weekend. And then maybe we do have some fun over the weekend, but it's just to get us through so that we can live the rest of our normal life. And then we just do that all over again. Another sign of this is that we've accepted comfort and a life that feels good enough when deep down we know that we want something different or we want to build a life that is more meaningful. And a way that you could look at this is if you think about maybe when you were a teenager or a kid and you dreamed about the sort of life you were going to build, and then the reality of that is different than what you dreamt about. And now you've just sort of accepted this life that isn't actually what you wanted to create. And then the last piece of this is if you don't feel a lot of excitement, passion, or purpose in life, a lot of times this can feel like we're just getting through, we're just surviving life. And I think there's times when we all have moments of that, right? Because life is hard. It's not always this experience of bliss. But I think if ultimately you don't have excitement about where your life is headed and no purpose or passion about that, this is another indicator that you may be disconnected from what you actually value most and that higher purpose. And again, another way you could think about this instead of going back and looking at what you wanted before you became an adult is fast forwarding to when you're 80 years old. And what will you want your 80-year-old self to say about the life that you lived? And is your life today in alignment with what that 80-year-old would say? Would you be proud of that? Would you see that you're on the path? Would you see that it was all moving towards that? Or would you see it as there's a big portion of my life that I was completely disconnected from what I ultimately cared about? And in this category, it's actually kind of tricky because we are often pursuing seemingly good things like a career, like the house, the job, this sense of belonging in our communities. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's not a good thing, but oftentimes we may miss that we have lost sight of that deeper passion and feeling of thriving in life. And this is very common because we can get in the rat race, we can get plugged into doing what society tells us that we should be doing instead of listening to our own inner guide about what we actually really want. Okay, and then moving into the third category of disconnect, which is when we are disconnected from God. And this one could surprise you. So hang in there with me because it surprised me. And when this shifted, it completely changed everything. It changed my perspective. It changed how I approached life. It changed how I approached God and spirituality. And it gave me so much peace. I hope that I articulate this in a way that it does the same thing for you. You may be disconnected from God if you don't hear guidance and direction in your life. Or if you do, it's very sparingly. You don't have the experience of getting what I call the spidey senses, the chills, the spirit, or also getting clear signs in your life. When I am very connected and very aligned with God, I have very clear signs that come to me and a feeling inside me of chills, confirmation, knowing. It's a tangible thing that I feel. Another way that could indicate that you might be disconnected from God is that if you think of God as an enforcer, someone to reprimand you, or something that you need to feel guilty about if you are not checking the boxes. So how I internalized God was that there was certain check boxes that I had to meet, things I had to do in order to have God's presence in my life. And that I actually now believe is a sign of being disconnected from who God truly is and the power of God in your life. Now, are there things that we can do to feel even more connected to God? Yes, absolutely. Are there things that we can do to put ourselves in the energy of being with God? Yes, absolutely. But if we see it as a checklist and things to feel guilty about if we are not doing, then my take on this is that we have misunderstood the truth of who God truly is and how God desires for us to connect. And the next one is that you have a certain fear around if you are being good enough to have God's love and presence and guidance in your life. That could also be an indicator. Okay, you have a hard time feeling like you have clarity in making decisions. Another one is you don't have a calm or peaceful feeling about life in general or about your relationship with spirituality or the divine or God, the creator. If any of that does not feel calm and peaceful, and this was a big one for me, I think it's a sign of disconnect or of true understanding of God. And again, this is my take. So if anything I have said feels, I don't know, activating, then I just want to honor that. And this is my own experience of how I realized that I was disconnected, even though I felt like I was doing the right things. I wasn't truly connecting. And that's my whole point. Okay. Okay. And then finally, if life feels very hard, pointless, meaningless, maybe you feel sort of bitter, numb, disengaged from your spirituality and from your life, this also could be an indicator. Now, if you are going through something very traumatic, if you have something in your life that is like completely blowing up and very hard, then also like trauma plays into this. So I just want to say, take that with a grain of salt. But if in general you are not experiencing some big traumatic event and you are feeling like life is pointless, meaningless, you feel bitter, numb, disengaged. Again, this is an indicator that that disconnect may be there. If any of these resonate, then show yourself a whole lot of gratitude and give yourself so much grace right now because life has probably been really hard. You've probably been struggling and you've probably been carrying a lot on your shoulders. And even just to have the self awareness to now start to see what's happening is a great first step. And if anything I said makes you feel shame or guilt or anything like that, please do not go down that path because all we're trying to do is bring awareness to what is happening so that we can start to shift into something more helpful. And we live in a world that wants you to feel this way, that wants you to feel stuck, that wants you to feel disconnected, because then you keep consuming, then you stay sick, then you stay depressed, and you stay in the rat race and further away from your true, authentic connection and true, authentic self. So the good news is that we can choose a different path and choose a practice of being connected, being more engaged, and allowing life to be so overwhelmingly joyful. And that is why I love this topic so much and why I feel like it did change my life. Okay, so now that we can see the disconnect that might be happening, and if you identified with any of those pieces, then this part will be helpful. Let's just shift into what it looks like to be in that higher state of alignment. 3 ways to think about alignment. Number 1 is alignment with your true authentic self, who your soul is, who you came here to be, who God created you to be. Number 2 is alignment with your values, your purpose, and the things that are most important to you in this life. And then number 3, alignment with the Creator and with all of the blessings, the abundance, and the love that is available to you and waiting for you just to tap in. All right, so for this part, if you are alone and you are not driving and you are somewhere where you can do this, I want you to close your eyes and just have a moment with me. And if you can't do that, then try as much as you can to be present for this. So I want you to imagine a presence and a light completely surrounding you, completely filling you up with more love, peace, abundance, and overflow than you can possibly imagine. Imagine that all of your worries and your cares fall away. And when you're surrounded by this presence, you feel joy, you feel ease, and you feel complete peace and more love than you have ever felt in your entire life. And then I want you to look around and see that everything around you is beautiful and filled with this same energy. The trees, the plants, the birds, your home, the people around you, the sounds that you hear, everything is beautifully designed and perfectly connected to this loving presence of overflow, abundance, peace, and love. And I want you to imagine that this feeling is God's essence here on earth and that it is presented as this beautiful, loving, overpowering presence. Next, see yourself as part of this beautiful plan and as a unique soul who came here created as a true son or daughter of this presence, and that there is absolutely nothing that you need to do, no checklists, no striving, no achievement to be a part of this presence and this love and this divine creation. It is literally in your DNA, and however this presence created you was for a specific purpose and a reason that fits into this beautiful plan, all working together like a piece of a puzzle. And now you can see that you are here on this earth trying to navigate your life, what to prioritize, what to focus on, where to exert your energy, and you're trying to find your purpose. And you can feel in the quiet moments that you have a reason for being here, that you feel a call to something deeper, to a deeper connection with this presence. But the chaos of the world keeps you confused, disconnected, and seeking validation and peace outside of yourself and outside of this ultimate source of peace and presence. So you start to take on personas, masks, identities that you think will make you feel this sense of peace and clarity. And the seeking and the chasing only worsens. And then you feel this disconnect deepen, and soon you forget what it was even all about, why you are here, and how you feel that loving presence. So I introduced you to an idea, a way of thinking about God's love and presence. And then I showed you how we get disconnected from that and what starts to happen. And I want to present you with a couple of simple but powerful ways that thinking about this really helped me perceive God in a way that was so helpful and made it so much easier for me to understand and to truly connect. The first thing was understanding that God's presence and power on earth is presented as love all of the time, always, as an ever-present flow and energy that can be tapped into, tuned into, and connected with at any time. No matter how far off the path you feel, no matter how messy it's gotten, you can at any time, at any point, choose to re-engage with and tap into this presence of God's power and love. And now the second point is how this applies to you. Imagine yourself grounded here on earth, recognizing who you truly are as God's true descendant, son, or daughter, with the ability to have this presence and this power flow through you and elevate you and magnify you at any time. And the more that you love yourself and realize and accept the magnitude of your creation and what a gift you are to this earth, the more that God can work through you and do good on this earth and help others. When you reject yourself, hate yourself, or think less of yourself than the beautiful and divine creation that you are, you reject this presence of God's creation in you. You also reject the ways that God could work through you as a vessel of light here on this earth. Now that you have this understanding of God's presence and you ground into the truth of who you are, I want you to imagine yourself sitting. I like to imagine myself cross-legged outside in nature because this feels very grounding to me. So if that feels grounding to you, then imagine it that way. And I want you to imagine that there is a straight pillar or vessel of light coming down from heaven and pouring into the crown of your head and filling your entire body with this light. I want you to think of this channel. I'm calling it a channel just because I want you to understand the concept of how you can tune into it at any time. Almost like a radio dial. Like you can start to tune into that station. And if you don't intentionally tune into that station, there's a lot of other stations going that can be very distracting and overwhelming because the world is loud and there's a lot of noise. And so I like to think about it as this straight and narrow channel that I can tune into at any time and that I can immediately start to communicate, receive, and flow with God and feel God's love in my life at any time that I need it. Now, after you have this visualization of this pillar flowing into you, you're grounded, you can feel God moving through you and that light filling you up. Take your values and all of the things that you decided were most important to you in this life and use them as your guardrails inside of this channel, keeping you aligned with this path. This will help you become more and more in tune and more of a clear vessel. And the more that you can use these to guide your path in life and help keep you aligned with who you truly are, what you truly value in life, and with God. And this will help guide and direct you in your life. So, all of this is available to us at any time and can help us immensely when it comes to finding flow in life, to finding more ease, gaining clarity, and to reestablishing that connection. And just practice being in the presence of God, feeling that love overtake you. Now, hopefully, this visual of the pillar of yourself, of that like straight connection, can help you tap into this. And for me, simplifying it like this just really helps me. I tend to be an overthinker, an overanalyzer, and I really overcomplicated God in my life. And this has just helped bring me so much peace because I don't ever think of it as hoops that I have to jump through in order to be connected with God and to feel God's love. I truly understand that ultimately the whole entire point from my perspective is that God just wants us to connect. God wants us to lay it all out there, to converse, to align, and God wants to bless our lives and wants us to be able to receive all of the blessings. If we don't understand this concept of love and who we are as creations of the Creator, and ultimately how that plays into our ability to truly connect and be a vessel of light in this world, that it's very, very hard to do impactfully if you do not think highly of yourself, if you do not realize the true worth of who you are, if you do not realize who God created you to be and that you are one of God's creations and you love yourself as that. And like I said before, really tuning into and connecting with God in this way and surrendering to this love and letting it fill my life and letting myself be directed by what I was hearing and experiencing completely changed everything and has given me a sense of peace that has been so freeing. And so I'm going to tell you a quick story just to wrap this all up, and then we'll give our grounding takeaway. So it was 2020. My husband and I were living in my mother-in-law's basement. We had started a business, and something in the business had gone south. And we were in a tough place. We were starting from scratch. And I was starting to build out my career in marketing, and my husband was still working on this business. And I mentioned in my previous episode, he had lost his job. And when I first went into marketing after building out my full hair career and making great money doing hair and having my own studio and all those things, when I left that and then started over in marketing, I literally started as an intern making $10 an hour when I was 30 years old. And it was crazy. And then we had this challenge at work, and it's called the Miracle Morning. And basically, we had to wake up an hour earlier than you normally would. There are specific things within Miracle Morning that we were supposed to do, but basically, an hour to connect. And I used that time to pray, to meditate, to journal. And so I'm spending this time every single morning, an hour, just me and God. And I had some of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had in my entire life. I feel like God showed me so many things about myself, about my path. It's so interesting because even today, I'm seeing some of those things that I saw back then come to fruition. And it's actually crazy because it's 6 years later. But not only did I feel so much more peace and calm in this connection, but I also started to have crazy things start to happen in our lives. The short version is we went on vacation to St. George. We just did a little getaway. St. George was 4 hours from where we were living. And I was sitting outside doing my miracle morning out at the pool before anyone was there. And I just heard, this is where you're supposed to live. This is where you're supposed to be. And it just hit me like a lightning bolt. And so we ended up looking at lots and finding this really cool place to live. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this. but we were able to qualify for this house, but it was going to take them a while to build it because this was right at the beginning of 2020. So I have this prompting, and then we go home and everything just falls into place. We needed to save up money for a down payment. And within 6 months of me doing this morning time with God, we were able to save $50,000. And I won't get into the details of that, but at that time, that was a crazy amount of money for us to save up, given what our income had been. It was insane. And everything just started to fall into place. My clients at work, everyone was thriving, everyone was winning, everyone was having success. And during 2020, when the whole world was falling apart and everything was so chaotic, I had so much peace in my life and everything just started to come together. So this is my example to give you that, like, this presence in my life completely changed my life. And I hope that this way of viewing it and thinking about it can be helpful on your journey, especially if you have ever found it hard to truly connect, or maybe the ways that you've been doing it have felt heavy in some ways. And don't shame yourself for that. Just remember that at the end of the day, this love and this connection is key to everything else, and it is always available to you. And the most simple way to connect with this is just to find stillness and true connection with your creator. All right, so that was a lot to unpack, but I hope it was helpful for you. And maybe you already see God this way. Maybe this realization, you know, you already had. But for me, I think part of the reason why I struggled and why I had such a faith crisis is because I did not view it this way. I viewed God in a much more stringent and much more reprimanding, shame-based type of way. And this completely freed me of seeing my creator that way and seeing me as the creation that way. All right, so to wrap this all up for your grounding exercise, if you want to practice and experiment with this for yourself, commit to finding intentional time for stillness with God. For me, it is most powerful in the morning before I start my day, before I get into the chaos of kids and work and people needing me. But find what time works best for you and just start to truly connect and disengage from all the other noise. If you're going to do it on a walk, not listening to something else while you're doing it. If you're going to do it in the morning, really spend time being present there, not just praying, but then sitting and listening. A big part of it is listening, actually, and then trusting what you hear. And I will drop some journal prompts for this process of alignment in the show notes. But something that I want to leave you with is that life gets to be easier and more beautiful and more abundant and more loving than you can ever imagine. You just have to lean in and trust and align with this presence of love and of the creator, and then surrender everything else to that. Thank you so much for being here on this journey with me and trusting me with your time. I'm so grateful that we get to do this thing called life together. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Light Centered Podcast. If this episode lit something up inside you, it would mean the world to me if you shared it with a friend who might need the message today. If you're looking for more support on the journey of stepping into the most authentic version of you, you can find the links to all of this in the show notes below. And finally, never underestimate the impact that you can have on the world when you live from a space that is centered in the light that you were always meant to share. I'll see you next week.